I hope this will be a very engaging session where everyone gets a chance to see the real Africa and question whether there is anything that we can do about the state in which we call it the dark continent. In front of us are very established and well-known architects and designers, thought leaders in their own right. I would like to introduce, from my left, Mphethi Morojele, founder and managing director of MMA Design Studio, a leading voice in Southern African architecture. Mphethi is renowned for his focus on designing solutions for rapid urbanization that directly address the realities of emerging populations, advocating for designs rooted in local economic and social sustenance. We can have a round of applause, people. Next to him, we have the ever so lovely Mona Hussein. She is the owner and CEO of Mona Hussein Design House. Hailing from Egypt, Mona is known for her innovative approach to luxury and bespoke design, offering a crucial perspective on how to match high-end client expectations with regional, appropriate, culturally resonant architecture. Let's have a round of applause. Immediately after her, we have Anton Larsen Payá. He's the principal at Mass Design Group, representing a globally impactful firm. Anton brings a philosophy of regenerative design, emphasizing the creation of a net positive impact on the environment by leveraging local craftsmanship and materials. He's based in Rwanda. Let's have an applause. And last but not least, we have Andrew Kusewa Kilonzi, director at Boogertman and partners as architects. The and is a plus, so he always emphasizes on the plus. Andrew represents one of the largest architectural practices, providing vital insight into executing large-scale, complex projects across diverse African markets while seamlessly integrating modern design and sustainability practices. Let's have a round of applause. So we are all here together to discuss a very heavy topic. I am, let me say admittedly, the youngest person in this panel, so mine would be to listen in and hopefully ask the dumb questions like a nice schoolboy on your behalf. As we are all gathered, obviously the panel topic is on the screen. We have had a lot of conversations where we try to understand how do we approach this topic, because ideally we can talk about the reality, and reality is somewhat grim, but doesn't mean that it is concrete. The ideal trends that we are looking forward to would be the same trends that are out there in the architectural forums. Topics about resilience and sustainability. I'd like you to take that home. In the context of urban development, another buzzword would be the collaboration and inclusivity of, let's call them the design culture, the local craftsman, and also engaging the historical context for identity. Going into another buzzword would be circular economies, which is very big in the sustainable world, but it has its own approach, because with building materials, you can't really approach it from a point of thinking sustainability. You have to think about the person who's extracting the resource, the manufacturer who's making innovations, changing the paradigm shifts from what was contemporary, what was being engaged in by everyone else, and then shifting it into something that can be recycled, that can be upcycled, and that can make the whole ecosystem better. And another last point would be the return on investment, which most of you are here for. How do you justify lovely, iconic buildings when the cash flows don't really match up? And I think once we settled on these particular buzzwords, we found that in their own practices and in their own right, they have had experience in tackling these issues. So we're all here to at least have a chance to listen in to their story. I will start from the farthest on my left, where collaboration would be the topic that Andrew Kusewa takes us through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thanks to the GBB team for hosting us here. And I think to begin with, I work for Boogertman and Partners Architects. And for us, partnership is in our DNA, it's in the name. So a lot has been talked today about partnerships. I think even in this forum, in our engagements, we've been seeking partnerships with the bigger groups. And for us, one of our taglines at Boogertman is designing the future and navigating the future of Africa. So to navigate that future of Africa, and especially on the projects that we work on, which are mostly large-scale projects, I can give an example. I think the first World Cup held in Africa, Soccer City, that stadium, those of you who know it, saw the finals in 2010. That was Boogertman and Partners. So that's a very large project. To actually run that project at that scale, one of the things that for us as an innovative practice is to find the right partnerships. Sorry. Okay, so to find the right partners to execute such a project at that scale is critical in terms of how we view success in terms of design. And I think the next big project coming up, and you'll hear a lot being talked about it, is the United Nations project in Nairobi. Again, a complex project, requires a lot of partners. And again, in this conversation today, we're going to be talking with the partners here who are the group. It's partnerships we're going to develop in terms of how we work together in future as well. So the other thing probably to raise around Boogertman's approach is we have future part. Sorry, just go to the next slide. Yeah, so we have a future part and a future studio, which is about questioning those designs, questioning what design and buildings in Africa will look like. And again, we also run another program called Ubunifu. Ubunifu in Swahili means creativity. So as thought leaders, we are really pushing that agenda, that we are creative, that we are looking at the future in terms of how we design for different applications.
Those are very great approaches to collaboration. And I believe, as you pointed out, we are all here to partner. We are all here to collaborate. So how else can we really move Africa to that next level? I'd like to invite Mona to take us through her presentation where circular economies, rebirthing local crafts for present-day projects can be looked at in depth.
Well, thank you everyone for being there, and thank you, Michael, for arranging that amazing panel. I would like to say for myself as a designer, you can't help but being influenced by everything that surrounds you. Egypt is an immense ground for so much culture and influence that you can't run away from it. And for us as a company, and I think I want to thank all our ancestors because they have made our life so much easier to be creative. And that has helped me a lot. Our company is a one-stop shop service of architecture, interior, landscape, and product design. And when we take one whole project with that concept, it's our dream come true, because from the beginning of the architecture with the lines, how we make it more modernized, contemporary, we build on the history, yet we gave it that new twist, and then it follows through with other things. We have some pictures here to show. No, the first, back again.
That's true.
Okay, like here, this is it's a villa in the Red Sea. It's a modernized architecture from, of course, our known architect, Mphethi, where you have the court, the open court in the middle of the house, where every room falls into that. So we have taken that into consideration in the design of that villa. And also with our old traditional terrazzo tiles, the handmade tiles, we modernized the patterns, simplified them, and put them in that design. This, of course, creates a totally new look, apart from the furniture that is the mastaba sofa that is deep and low, yet it has this contemporary feel. Slide after. Egypt is, I mean, it's such a wealth of culture that, as I said, I can't hide away from it. We have a brand which is called Mahalli, which is for product design. We collaborate with so many young designers. We have a competition for them, for product design, and we collaborate with them and producers, so we get them together. But I want to fall back on this simple product design, which shows Egypt's different cultures between the Islamic, which is the Kahramana motif we have taken. Second one is the Coptic, which is the original Egyptians from before Christ. And we have the Nubian, which of course has a lot of connections with the African designs because it's all about simple geometric yet intricate with a lot of vibrant colors. And we have the calligraffiti, which is the modernized Arabic Kufi and different kinds of calligraphies. With these designs, we have made products, we have made things that are modernized, put on simple things. They create a very strong identity of the space and giving it a lot of character. One of the important things in Egypt, handicrafts, is the mouth-blown glass. And we have created like light fixtures like that, inspired from the Arabic OL, and which the designer has the ability to make their own mix of these bracelets of mouth-blown glass to create the identity for themselves. And this is the passion we have about our design. It's versatile, it falls back on a lot of history and a lot of craftsmanship, and also it falls back on the young designers that are in Egypt. Once they are briefed and given the idea of the whole project, we come up with so many different ideas. So this is basically our passion. It's about culture, whether in architecture or interior or landscape.
And as it is, they look quite exquisite. I would like to implore the glass manufacturers and suppliers who are back there, kindly set your factories in Egypt.
Yes, and we have worked with some developers that are here also, some of the...
Fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
This ties well into now the local crafts and engaging communities, which is a topic Anton is very familiar with, where in his exploration, he'll be discussing resilience and sustainability, where urbanizing around natural resources with communities is very pivotal in just ensuring that all the aspects of architecture and eco-friendliness goes hand in hand.
Thank you, and thank you to GBB for inviting me for this panel discussion. It's really exciting to be here. So yeah, by 2050, 1 in 4 people on Earth will be African. So the question is not whether we build, but how we build. And whether we repeat the extractive models that cause today's crises, or whether we lead with a new paradigm a paradigm of regenerative development. So I'm really excited about this panel because I see it as a chance to reframe the conversation. Africa's real estate boom isn't just about building more, but it's really about building differently in ways that allow communities to thrive and nature to regenerate while achieving a return on investment for developers and investors. So we often talk about reducing the carbon footprint, but I really like to think about increasing the human handprint, the positive social, ecological, and economic impact that design on the continent can create. Every decision, where the materials come from, how the buildings breathe, really shape both footprint and handprint. And this shift from footprint to handprint is what will ultimately deliver and drive long-term value, creating a return on investment, creating resilience, and also creating an identity that is African, so an African real estate. So a great example I like to share is the volcanic stone in Rwanda. So when we started to work there 15 years ago, volcanic stone was seen as a waste material. Farmers at the foothills of the volcanoes would pile it up on the side of the fields and was really not used and seen as a waste. So we actually saw the material as an opportunity to elevate something that was there through craftsmanship, incorporating it into the Butaro district hospital. And today, this material has really become part of Rwanda's architectural identity. There's so many projects across the country, that are now using volcanic stone. And this, in turn, has created entire supply chains, have grown local economies, local quarries, giving jobs for masons and finishes. And it's also an example of low carbon, durable, and deeply rooted in place. And it provides a material that can be used for the future. And we can see that it's already around us. So I believe, in every geography, in every country, Africa is so diverse. So in each place, there's an opportunity to find materials and craftsmanship and work with local knowledge. So when we think about it at a city scale, I was lucky enough to be involved in the early conceptualization of the Green City Kigali, working with the Rwanda Climate Fund, and also then afterwards participating in a design competition for a new 600-hectare and 30,000 residents new neighborhood, a climate-resilient neighborhood with a concept that the hill, the neighborhood being on a hill, can build itself, where the earth excavated for foundations can become material for earth blocks, stones can become material for foundations, clay can be produced, manufactured on the hill for the walls, creating jobs and creating local values. So also thinking about water and circular systems, making a city that functions like a sponge. So when there's a storm, water can be absorbed, and when we're in the dry season, through reservoirs it can be used. And then lastly, a simple idea, but a pretty powerful one. What if every resident has a tree? So planting 30,000 new trees that will cool the climate, it will store the carbon, and also create shade. So imagine if every housing development in Africa would deliver a net biodiversity increase. We would have greener, cooler, and more resilience throughout. So an example is the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture, which is recognized as the world's first climate-positive university, where we have 70 buildings, landscapes, and a curriculum that all teach regeneration. We source 90% of the materials by weight within Rwanda through the stone foundations, earth walls, timber structures, and generated all the power through solar, and then lastly, restore biodiversity and therefore sequestering the carbon emitted during construction. Another example is the Norske Kigali House, which is East Africa's largest hub for entrepreneurship, where we provided adaptive reuse and provided both social and environmental returns using 100% energy. And then lastly, the Biomed building that showcased a multi-story research building where we were able to pretty much remove all needs for air conditioning, but using and doing what architecture knows best through shade orientation and allowing airflow. So just to conclude, I think like for investors and developers, this approach offers 3 clear advantages. One, it lowers operational costs and reduces risks. Passive system, local material, reduce dependency on volatile supply chains. It creates market differentiation through nature and biophilic and identity-rich developments, which in turn are quicker to lease and easier to sell. And then lastly, policy alignment. I think really Africa has opportunity to leapfrog in global shift towards biodiversity and climate-positive developments.
And I hope you've been paying attention because there's a question and answer session. Yeah, sequestration. Who here can spell it? Yeah, it's coming. All right, and we can go forward to the 4th of our agenda points, which is return on investment, where we are going to have Mphethi go through at least the whole approach in terms of convincing clients or looking into sense of belonging over the profit margins that people usually go for. So I welcome Mphethi.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank GBB for hosting this amazing event. I've met some very interesting people. I'm going to talk 5 minutes. On this morning, there were 2 very important issues that came up. One is about this idea of de-risking and how we understand risk. And the other one is about how do we tell our own stories as Africans. And I'd like to link the 2 possibly in the way that I'd like to talk about some of the work that we do. I think the first thing is that we do recognize that there is rapid growth and urbanization, which we haven't seen before. And this growth is happening with people who are often of low income. And so it's a very different way that the world has seen urbanization happen before. So the question then becomes, how do we deal with the current risks that's associated with that kind of development? At the same time, we're looking at issues of sustainability, climate fragility, social justice, all these issues that, again, create risks in development. One thing that the world is increasingly recognizing is the importance of not only biodiversity, which helps us sustain ourselves as humans on the planet, but also cultural diversity. And the more and more we kind of harmonize as an international community, the more and more we lose the wealth of a lot of the diversity and the wealth that comes out of having different cultural kind of intelligences. So some of our projects you'll see on the top there was an imagination. As architects, we like to capture the imagination. It was imagining an airport in the north of Botswana in a place called Maung, which is the gateway to the Okavango, one of the most fragile and fantastic kind of ecological sites on our planet. And the idea was that this thing of the experience economy, what's more and more being called the experience economy, means that we have to design for people's experiences. And how do we do that? We do that through enhancing the kind of local environments in which we designed. So it's all about capturing the imagination and increasing both biodiversity and cultural diversity. The other thing is, how do we harness the creative industries? Africa is one of the fastest growing creative industries in the world. with a young population who are increasingly creating new and innovative content, what we call content. And by transversing and being multidisciplinary in the way we design, in this instance working with fashion designers to kind of fashion our architecture, there are ways in which we can innovate as the creative industries do. So all of these start to tell our own stories, both through understanding our local need for biodiversity, for cultural diversity, and by working with a lot of the emerging creative industries. Also, I think with the rapid urbanization, how do we support what we call resilient ecologies? So in other words, social cohesion, which I think is formed by two things. One is the importance of public space in social cohesion. So as we develop our buildings, as we develop our environments, what we should never forget is the importance of public space to create social cohesion. Because without social cohesion, you can build as much as you like, but if there's a lot of conflict in your society, then you will not get the returns that we're seeking. So again, it's an appeal, again, to look at how we allow the public, the informal sectors, and design for informal sectors and for public space in our cities, ways that will allow us to have not only a return on investment financially, but a return on investment socially and culturally. And then finally, of course, how we then tell the stories of our landscapes. I mean, we've seen how big the continent is, what kind of landscapes we have. A lot of them have not been despoiled, and a lot of them have deep histories, deep geologies. There are a lot of mythical stories and a lot of materialities. And out of that is an inspiration for us to be able to develop what we call critical regionalism, so that our architecture actually speaks to the regions which it comes from. And therefore that enhances the experience economy. And through that we can get returns on our investment. If we build too much universally, people are always curious about where they are and what kind of is unique about those environments. And so I strongly believe that through good design, we can see economic growth, we can see social growth, and we can see a return on all the investments, the triple bottom line of the social, the financial, the economic, and the ecological. So I think in the time that I've been given, I would stop it there. Thank you very much.
All right. And with that, at least we have had their personal experiences, and they have gone into the buzzwords in a way that I hope all of us understand the importance of that professional outlook. The big questions can now come from the crowd. Is there anyone who would like to be passed the mic?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Milan. I'm the head of business development for CPS Africa, the developer of Town in Zanzibar, Tanzania. It's rather a comment than actually a question, but I wanted to highlight the deficit of housing that we have heard in, I think, in the first presentation of roughly 50 million houses of deficit, right? So that's number one. I think, Anton, you said that it's not the question how we build. It's whether the question how we're going to build these houses that are in demand, right? So it's quite critical how we build, because just the fact 30 to 40% of all global emissions are coming from the construction and its related industries, right? So we must kind of change the way how we conventionally build. We in Town in Zanzibar, it's not innovative, but we built half of our houses with timber, which is a sustainable regrowing material. It's not an innovative material because actually in ancient history, we have houses in Japan, all over the world, which have been built with timber. It's also not the only solution, but it's definitely one of the solutions that we really need to rethink the way how we build, because we must build these, well, millions of houses, and we must build them sustainably, right? That's, I think, the key. Plus, number two, we must build them in the range of where the people actually can afford them. So we can talk about mid to high-end luxury houses, but actually the key is to build these houses in an affordable way where the Africans actually can afford. Again, timber is not the only solution, but we can manufacture timber houses in a manufactured way and really build hundreds of thousands of houses and reduce the prices. So it's one of the solutions. I agree with the panelists. There are many solutions, but I just wanted to give a comment on that. Thank you.
I think just to add on some of the success stories you're hearing, like Fumba Town, I think it's also important that next time this discussion on how we are shaping Africa really happens in Africa. I think there's been a lot of commentary around that, and we can talk about the rapid urbanization, but how do we see examples that are success stories? So we have a pause in this pace. And the pace can't be stopped, the rapid urbanization. So how do we have a pause and have this forum where we're discussing how we're shaping Africa, in Africa? I like the conversation about Fumba and what you're doing in terms of construction. I think there was a lot of also other success stories that were mentioned on the panel around design that we should be seeing and experiencing even as we speak in this forum.
I can say something about Egypt, which many decades ago faced the same problem of missing a lot of housing. It's not a true success story, but by allowing the people themselves to build land on their land, but having some guidelines will help that, but facilitating, because the government cannot do all that at the same time and provide for all that housing. But not to fall in the same mistake that Egypt did, that the red bricks building was done on agricultural land, that the government, it should be a national policy of how to facilitate for all within the price range of all the people to build their own houses with a certain criteria, provide those economical material for them, maybe facilitate payments and stuff like that. The problem can be solved in the long run, but in the right direction.
Yes, you can continue the questions.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Charles Constantine. I'm presenting a company called Goodman. We are experts in facades and building enclosure. By the way, you look like Ronaldinho. Huh? Don't forget that. That's a first impression. Thanks from Mphethi on his touch on localization. Mona, I met her also this morning. We had a nice interaction, and I loved her.
You said I look like Dalida.
Exactly. I wanted to say that. So after Ronaldinho, she's the Dalida touch in architecture. So congratulations. Thank you for remembering what I told you. Yeah. I appreciate it. I loved your historical comparative chart that you discussed, and Anton on ecological power. That's very important, and of course, Andrew and his directions on designs. I have one question. In order to avoid Me Too story by copying places and pasting them, with this new power of architecture, how you think protecting culture through architecture can be done by combining all your wonderful voices, and also, what is the blueprint for such an ambitious strategy? Because that's, I think, what would make Africa different from any other place. Thank you very much.
Mphethi, you want to start?
Yes, I think this is all what we are aspiring to, so thank you for recognizing that. One thing which I find very important is to try and find the poetics in dealing with pragmatic problems. It's all well and good to kind of look at something purely from an aesthetic point of view. But if you're solving a pragmatic problem and you do it poetically, that's the beauty of what comes out of working with very little resources, which is often what we find ourselves working with. You know, I once sat with Charles Correa, a very prominent Indian architect, many, many years ago. And he said that, you know, you get talent all over the world, but it's the issues that they're dealing with that creates the great architecture. And I think we have enough of those issues for us to really be able to develop some very interesting architecture.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a really great question. Yeah, I think, you know, how to resolve for that. I think it starts by asking the right questions in the place where you are. Understanding the context, and addressing to the constraints, and you know, understanding the climate, understanding the culture, and you know, also learning from what was being done, you know, generations ago. There's a lot of intelligence in the vernacular architecture. Even here in Dubai, you go to the historical city before the invention of air conditioning. They had cities that were comfortable, right, without the use of air conditioning. And that was by using intelligence with it, you know, in this case, the towers, the ventilation towers. And I believe in every place, there is that intelligence. So I think for me it starts with like uncovering and understanding what is the intelligence of the place, and adapting it to the modern context, modern needs. So I truly believe you can have an architecture of the place that it's modern, and by asking those right questions, then you can come to like answers that make something that is unique of the place.
Now, as Ronaldinho, I would only add that when it comes to collaboration and inclusivity, that point, it's very important to consider the craftsman, the level where you have, in Kenya we call them Chuakali. I believe in every region they would have a different name. Because it doesn't mean that when you have a solution from Dubai or a solution from China, it's all plug and play and it can be distributed across the world. For example, if we were to look into a different market, if you were to look into fast food, when Coca-Cola or when KFC goes into a new region, they change the spices a bit. They include the chefs, they include the people who they're targeting. And after a market research, they just add that extra ingredient X. That ingredient X is anything for you guys to think about. Because at the end of the day, you're going to appeal to different sides of Africa in terms of supplies, manufacturing, and all the, back to the Juakali, all those people have their own innate knowledge. So it's a matter of making them feel included. Even training them would be just enough, because once they're being trained, there's a feedback that they're giving. And that feedback is what's going to inform on whether the product or whether the architecture or whether the output of the process of construction, development, and all that would be accepted by the same market. So are there any other questions from the crowd? All right. I'd like to open a few questions as we still have about 5 minutes. As we have all discussed about these 4 points, it's quite clear that in terms of context, that context, we are all trying our best in addressing the common problems. How do you find, for instance, the conversion of clients, especially, let's say, informal sectors, in adopting standards? Especially, let's talk about Rwanda. I would believe before the revolution of now people accepting, let's say, the red brick houses, there must have been a growing pain in accepting that particular approach. How easy is it to convince certain clients, even on behalf of the products and the innovation that we are finding here in Dubai, in winning them over for a more sustainable future?
Well, yeah, thanks for this question. I think it starts by showcasing what is possible. So I think there's the role of key projects, demonstration projects is very important to like push the boundaries on innovation, as well as, even working with local craftsmanship, there's ways that you can also innovate. So there's really that role of pilot projects or demonstrational projects, showing what's possible. But then also, like, how do you bring that to scale is through teaching, is through dissemination, and is also through policy. In the particular case of Rwanda, we are very lucky that we can work closely with the government often to, discuss standards, discuss topics. For example, like earth construction was not legal until the second edition of the Rwandan Building Code, 2019, although 80% of the homes in Rwanda built out of earth. So once that was reintroduced as a valid legal material, we worked with a think tank, Earth Enable, the Rwandan Standards Board, to develop the standards for earth construction. And now, it's available. So there's a role of, teaching, dissemination, and policy.
And clearly, we have our work cut out, especially when it comes to policy. So I'd like to say this has been a very informative panel. One of the last questions which I could just throw out there, and this is for everyone here, is to consider this as a take-home. When we talk about Africa, some people think of it as probably a country or a small state. Africa is diverse. When, for instance, people are invited to an event and they're told, come with African dressing, we all have an image in our head. I don't want anyone to say it, but you have an image in your head. But when you get to that venue, there's a whole vibrance that no one can compare. I would like to encourage all of us as a take-home that it doesn't matter what approach you're going for, whether you come from one industry or the other in terms of the building industry, glass, or may it be steel work. It's a matter of just playing your part. In addressing the issues, you find the identity of Africa coming out. And it will be a bit different from where you come from, but it will always feel like home. So, with that said, I would like to thank everyone, and let's have a round of applause.
Thank you.